from high school. The average community education level is 5th grade, and 15% of them meet federal and state qualifications as homeless. That's a little bit of a snapshot of who we are. Here's a little snapshot from Tom of
transforming education is pretty complex, and so we have a couple of visuals that narrow down the key pieces to what we do.
Hey Barry, I just want to check. The video is cutting out just a little bit. Are you guys close to the microphone?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear you. Okay, I can hear you clearly now. It cut out for just a minute as you presented this framework and started here. Can you?
Yeah, on our end, it looked like it fell off a little bit for a minute there. Are we back on now, though?
I think you're back on. Yep, you're good to go.
All right. So in this visual, you can see that in our system, personalized learning, competency-based learning, and transformational technology. So while there's many components of it, we look at these as essential elements to the transformation underway in Lindsay. Learner empowerment is something that many systems leave off. And this is about truly engaging learners in their own goal setting and monitoring their own progress and actively going after their learning and communicating where they are in that. So when you think of competencies and you think often of communicating the performance or the progress of learners, our learners and their level of empowerment actually helps to do that a lot. Customized structures is with regard to the schedule, when learning happens, where learning happens, how the scoring system works. It's taking traditional structures, dismantling them, and creating learner-centered structures. Obviously, it's a focus on academic excellence and personal excellence. Competency just is not only about the core academic subjects and demonstrating competence in that area, but also it's about demonstrating competence in what we refer to as our lifelong learning standards. You actually have to demonstrate competence in both those areas in order to graduate from our system. And then the power of technology, and I know that is a key factor in using technology as a tool to ensure everybody is connected 24/7, to ensure that they're using it in a manner that is advancing their learning and increasing their connectivity to others, and enabling them to be the drivers and of their own learning. And in the Empower platform is the platform where our content, where our assessments, where our reporting out systems and our resources all live. So that's kind of just a quick elevator speech of the key pieces of our system. Slide here shows the essential components of the ideal learning experience. And so ultimately, that's what we are creating for every single Lindsay learner. And it falls on this backdrop of a culture. You see the blue backdrop about investment, empowerment, collaboration, growth mindset, all of it being uncompromisingly learner-focused. And then each of our elements of investing in developing skilled leadership, what are our viable outcomes? Like, what are the competencies? What are the opportunities that we are providing, and are they motivating? How are learners able to demonstrate evidence of learning? How are we using technology in a transformational way? What are our structures that we have dismantled, and what does our instruction look like? So again, this is another visual that tells you the core components of our system of performance-based education.
So the first question that you've asked us to address is, how do we move our system towards competency-based education when state and university policies remain unchanged and our key actors in those institutions are unaware of competency-based education? We've heard this theme over and over again, and we feel like we've been navigating it in a way that's very successful and very helpful to our learners.
And so and we're going to go through a number of bullets here, and I'll expand on each of these, and you'll hear some philosophical understandings in the midst of it. Is our community and our state is obviously different than yours, unless you're in California. And so there may be state policies or obstacles that you have to overcome that that we necessarily don't have to face. But as you move forward with that, one nudge of encouragement that I would give you as we are moving to transform education is that we essentially, those who are in leadership roles and those who are working towards creating a more learner-centered, more future-focused, more results-driven and competency-based educational system, we can't wait for the systemic shifts to happen on the state level. And the reason is because we all know the years it will take, or potentially decades it will take, for legislation to go through that will actually create the shifts or will demand the shifts. But the reality is these types of shifts can't be legislated. And so my push to everybody is if you continue, this is what we've done in Lindsay, is we continue to basically look at what things might be getting in our way, and we try to find our way around them or through them, or we make modifications to our system to make it so that it works with whatever the law demands or requires. My point about making sure that we don't wait for the state to change their laws is that in doing so, as the bullet says there, we simply will lose another generation of learners. We can't wait around for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years to say, when will the right time be? When will the state allow us to do this? When the reality is, most states actually allow all of this now. And there might be some hoops you have to jump through. There might be some adjustments you have to make. You might have to do some things locally and then create like some conversion charts or some type of language that helps the outside world understand what you're doing. But the reality is, do what's best for your learners now. And what we found in California is they have not put up barriers to us, nor have they been a driving force behind our change. For the most part, there's been a very little interest up until recently. And now there is a greater interest because there's an understanding that the shift towards personalized learning is inevitable. And so little by little, there are people in the state who are saying, okay, so let's look at what Lindsay's doing. Let's look at what Vista's doing. Let's look at what a few other districts that are on this front edge of this transformation are doing. But for the most part, they have not put up barriers. We have we made the decision probably 4 or 5 years ago when people were encouraging us to get a waiver for the state test or get a waiver for graduation, 4-year graduation rate, or get a waiver for seat time, or get a waiver for the curriculum. You know, Common Core came out and they said, well, get a waiver so that you don't have to do that. And we intentionally made the decision to not become a charter district and not get waivers for anything. Because part of our story is that we are showing that this transformation can happen under the current ed code, with the current laws and regulations and the current financial situation that every other district in the state has to follow. That's part of our purpose and part of our role, is to show that this transformation can happen, because what we know is to get a waiver or to become a charter district or to do those things, it basically creates an excuse for others to not do the work, because they've essentially said, oh, you're doing that because you have this waiver, or you're doing this because you're a charter district. And so we're saying, no, we're a regular district that follows the same ed code, follows the same labor law, gets the same money that everybody else gets, and we are doing this because it's what our community demands and it's what our learners deserve. And so our recommendations, kind of leading down didn't give you lots of specifics, those can come up in the Q&A, but our recommendations for anybody who's engaged in this work is to embrace the mindset, is that you're going to do this work, and you're going to find a way to modify your practices to fit within the system. And so instead of saying, let's wait for somebody to give us permission, or instead of saying, let's wait for somebody to lead the way, or let's wait for somebody to fail first, we have had tons of failure along the way in the system transformation. But when you embrace the mindset of a growth mindset, then failure is inevitable as well. And picking yourself up and moving forward and learning from that failure is also part of that journey. The educational transformation that's needed in this country is not going to happen because people in our state or federal governments make changes to laws. It's going to happen because people on the ground floor, like everybody on this call and the many others who are not, and the people whom you serve, it's those people with the support of outside groups, Digital Promise and others who are actually pushing the work forward. That's how the transformation is going to happen. So it's embracing this mindset that you're going to do what's best for your learners, and you're going to fight the battles along the way, whether those be state or federal laws. So for an example of this would be how we approach standardized assessment. Okay, and so all of our learners are still, they are not placed in grade levels, they're placed in content levels based on where they are in the competencies. And so they progress along the learning competencies, they progress along our progression of learning based on their demonstration of competency and where they are in those progressions. But then they still have to take the state test, and so at their grade level. And so for some learners, that might mean they're working on content level 5 math, but they have to take the 3rd grade test because that's their grade level. For others, it might mean that they're working on content level 5 math, but they have to take the 7th grade test because that's where they're at. And so we've essentially looked at that and said, okay, we have our kids take the state test at the level of their grade level, because that allows our system to be compared to the traditional system. So that's part of our strategy, is to show that in time, our system is actually going to prove to be better than the traditional system, even according to standardized measures. Even though that is not our major, that's not how we measure our progress, that's not how we measure our success or lack of, but we know that there's this whole outside world. And all of you have that same outside world. This outside world that's going to judge you on whatever factors they determine. And so we can't just ignore those outside factors. And so in Lindsay, what we've done is we've made what's really matter internally make for our internal system. And then we've made either modifications or adjustments, or we have been responsive to the outside world, because we realize the outside world doesn't always understand our language or our actions or what we're doing. And we don't want our learners particularly to suffer because the outside world doesn't understand the way we're doing learning in Lindsay. And our system with, in our experience with universities particularly, is that there hasn't been any issues. Okay, I mean that's the simple way of saying it. If you think about it, universities accept homeschool kids. Universities accept international kids. Universities accept learners from all different types of settings, and it's a matter of sometimes translating your scoring system or translating your competencies so that the university can clearly understand them. We have fielded many calls from universities when they say, so okay, so what does this stuff mean? What does this level 4 mean? What does this level 3 mean? And when we share with them what our system is, and we share with them what it means to be at a level 3 or a level 4 in Lindsay's system, it actually has benefited our learners. And the universities more than anybody else, they know the flaws of the A through F grading system. They know that an A or a B or a C or a D in one system in the country or the state does not mean the same thing as an A or a B or a C or a D in another part of the state or the country. And because they know that, they actually prefer to have competencies. That's why they demand these entrance exams. And that's why it matters so much, because they know that the scores coming out of the high schools are so, I don't want to say they're irrelevant, but they are so inconsistent from school to school, even within the same district, district to district, even more so, state to state, even more so. The universities know this, and so they have been perfectly fine with Lindsay's system.
And for those of you who are concerned or worried about that, let me provide a little bit of data about our experience with our graduates going off to college and university system. Right now, we are graduating about 92% of our seniors, whereas before we made the transformation to the performance-based system, we were at about the 73rd level. 42% of our high school graduates currently attend a 4-year college or university, which has doubled since we began the competency-based model. In our state, it's about 34%. Nationwide, it's 31%. So you can see that we are doing better than both the state and the nation, despite our demographics. And when you compare that to like schools, only 18% of graduating seniors are attending 4-year colleges and universities. And then you might be asking, well, how do they do when they get to those colleges and universities? And we're just beginning to gather that data on persistence, but we're really excited because the most recent evidence is that 57% of our students who are leaving our system will possess that bachelor's degree within 4 years, 65% within 5 years, and better than 70% in 6 years. And that compares to the average Lindsay high school graduate who went to 4-year college and university and obtained a college degree, which was at 12% prior to the transformation. So as Tom suggested, not only are colleges and universities getting comfortable, they're recognizing that if you graduate from the Lindsay system and you're competent, you can test into English and math at the college level because we're graduating seniors who are ready for college. So I'm hoping that that inspires some motivation on your part and some good questions. We want to address, we're halfway through our time, so we want to address the second question, which is, how do you engage the voice of our local community? And how and when do you listen to, inform, and motivate parents as part of the shift toward competency-based education? And we have the good fortune of having some experience with that transition during the last 9 years.
So essentially, there's an incredible amount of power when you engage the voice of the community. Because essentially what we are doing in Lindsay is we are living out the voice of our community. You see, in 2007, we brought our community together. And we brought key stakeholders from our business community, our parent community, parents of all languages that were in the community. We brought together our unions, teachers union and classified unions. We brought together administration. We brought together all of the different groups that represented the voice of our community.
Our board members.
Our board members included. And we asked those community members these 5 questions. Why do we exist? How will we interact? What are the principles that will drive our decisions? What is our ideal future? And what is the description of our graduate? And from that came the mission of Lindsay Unified School District. That's why we exist, to empower and motivate for today and tomorrow. How we interact with each other is our core values. And those core values were defined by our community. The principles that will drive our decisions, these are the principles around learners and learning, teachers and teaching, and our learning community. The principles that will drive our decisions with regard to our fiscal decisions, our budget decisions, our curriculum instruction decisions. The answers to the ideal future question is our vision for the future. So the community painted a very future-focused vision around 7 different areas, or 8 different areas, around learning and personnel and technology, curriculum, instruction, stakeholders, assessment, and leadership. And they painted that vision on what we need to become. And the last question was answered by describing our graduate. And that became our lifelong learning standards. Those are the types of characteristics and personal qualities that every Lindsay graduate must have. Things such as being a person who can set personal goals and achieve and work through difficult situations, a person who can monitor their own progress, a person who's culturally aware and culturally sensitive. They recognize the role of being an economic producer and a global responsible citizen, a person who is civic-minded and completely and a compassionate human being. Those are the types of qualities that we would want all of our graduates and require all of our graduates to become. And so what we did when we started out the work is we front-loaded our leaders. So we literally spent 6 to 8 months front-loading our leaders with what the future demands of our learners. And my recommendation, and we didn't necessarily do it at the time, but as we work with organizations who are going through the transformation, is one of the things that I would recommend you do in relation to this question is front-load your parents and the community about what this future 21st century world is demanding of the graduate. And as people begin to, and there's videos out there, there's books out there, there's short articles, there's lots of information that you can put out there. You could have you could have community sessions where people are debating and discussing and reading and just dialoguing and helping people to understand that the world that our learners will face, whether we like it or not, and the world that they will work in and compete in is going to be very different than the world that we all grew up in. And it is the role of the educational system to make sure that we prepare the learners for that future. So clearly front-loading the parents about the desire and the need for this change, and involve them in your strategic design process. Involve them in the future. Involve them in the desirable outcomes you want for your learning community, because what we're doing now in Lindsay, and this is the reason why we get very little, minimal local pushback. The reason is because we're simply carrying out their will. We're carrying out their voice. We are making what they told us to do a reality. And the more we bring that up and the more we point that back to them and the more we look at them and say, okay, this is what you dreamed up and we're living it out. So which part of this do you not agree with? And most people find that they agree with all of it. And so therefore there's this great, and it doesn't mean we don't have our battles with individual parents and groups here and there, but they're minimal. And we have that mindset of working through them. So another element on how we've engaged our parents and how we have motivated them and informed them about the shift towards competency-based education is we have our Empower learner management system. That's where all of the content, resources, assessments, and where we had built out, I think we've built out about 100 playlists now that have been vetted, but there will be many thousands of playlists ultimately built out that essentially allow people to navigate their learning. And so we have created in the Empower platform a parent portal. And the parent portal has parent playlist. And so we've asked our parents, which elements of the performance-based system do you not understand or do you want to know more information about? And they gave us about 15 to 20 different ideas. They said, we want to understand the report card better. We want to understand what the scoring system means better. We want to understand what this thing called guaranteed and viable curriculum is. We want to understand how transformational technology is really going to impact my learner's future. And so what we've done is we've created a parent playlist for each of those topics. And so now the parents in the parent playlist basically includes the content, and includes some video resources, it might include some PowerPoints, it might include some exercises for a parent or a parent and a learner to go through together to help them deepen their understanding of the performance-based system. In addition to that, from the community of poverty that Barry described early on, When we started this, we only had about 40% of our families were connected to the internet, and very few learners actually had devices. And so we have made decisions in alignment with our strategic design in order to ensure that our learners all have not only connectivity, but they have their own devices. So every single Lindsay learner has their own device, and in 2nd grade through 12th grade, they keep that device 24/7. So they're able to take it to home and back and to engage in their learning and be connected to the world. But it doesn't help you if you don't have internet. And so for the last 18 months, we've engaged on a community-wide Wi-Fi project that has been written about, and there's some videos about the process, or brochures about the process and what's happened. But we've essentially, through that work, have connected over 90% of our learners and parents to the internet 24/7. And we're nearing the 100% level, and we'll hopefully be there with a new LTE solution that we're working on now. I want you to keep in mind, I want to make a comment about this though. Recognizing that the parents can inform the system, they can advise the system, and most importantly, you want them to be enrolled and empowered and be advocates for the system. And so the more information you give them, and the more you go forward with a clear purpose of the work you're doing, then the easier it is to have people in the community, particularly your parents, who are fully backing it and supporting it, and even more so, they're actually advocates for it. Sometimes there's some of our learning communities in which we actually, our greatest advocates, like if we have somebody who has a question or an issue, or a new parent comes in, we hook them up with this parent empower group. And the parent empower group basically converts them to understand what we believe, and convinces them that this is an incredible thing for their child. That convinces them is the wrong word, but just basically explains to them why it is and enrolls them in that. So I want you to recognize that you have all been hired. Those of you who are employed by the local public school system, you've been hired to serve kids, to create better opportunities.
Hey, Barry and Tom, you're cutting out again. Barry and Tom, are you there?
Your advocates. They aren't the ones who actually do the work day in and day out. Am I?
Barry, we can hear you now. We were cutting out for just a second there, but you were talking about your parents, their role versus your role, but it cut out for just a minute if you want to recap.
All right, so I'll recap that. If I think I'm back on now. Right. Okay, so
yes,
what I'll recap that is basically that recognizing that the parents are advocates, and the parents created the vision, and the parents set the future, but you've been hired to do the work. You are the employees are the ones who have to actually make the decisions, make the hard decisions, sometimes fail, pick ourselves back up, check and adjust, send out the communications. But we are in the work as educational leaders and learning facilitators and staff members. We are in the work day to day. It's not the parents' job to transform the system. It's those of us who are leading public education to actually transform the system.
Tom talked about the value of having a learning management system that parents can access. So not only have we connected our learners 24/7 to learning through our server and through our community-wide Wi-Fi, but parents also then can seek a voucher so that they can be connected. And they connect through our platform, and then they can enter these playlists that Tom mentioned to get more information. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do that because you're not in our system. But if you go to our webpage, and I'll reference it for you in just a minute, you'll be able to connect with several videos that will lead you through that process for adult learning. We recognize that we need to use 21st century strategies, including social media, to reach parents, and that their children, our learners, are very comfortable in those formats, and they're educating them and coaching their parents and using those models. We've also discovered that a disproportionate number of our learners in our little isolated community work for us, often in classified roles in our school district. So we spend a disproportional amount of energy and time bringing the classified staff up to speed about the model, understanding how it works, so that they can engage and empower their neighbors and their family members in understanding the Lindsay PBS.
And so what I would add to what on that last slide that Barry had as well, what I would add, he mentioned the classified staff. Now, these are the people who work in the food. These are the people mowing the lawns. These are the people answering the phones in the offices. These are the people running the after-school program. These are often the people, the classified staff members that don't get professional development and are often not enrolled. And so if you don't do that in your learning community, in your system, we would highly recommend that. In Lindsay, they are some of the greatest advocates for the system, not only because they work in the system, but because we've invested in them developing an understanding of the system. So when they're sitting around a family barbecue or sitting at Starbucks line and somebody says, so what's going on in your school district? They can, the custodian, the secretary, whoever, can confidently speak about the system in the same way Barry and I are speaking to you now. So Barry's going to reference a website where there's lots of support and resources there, but on February 10th of this year, Marzano Research will be producing a book titled Beyond Reform, Systemic Shifts Towards Personalized Learning. This is essentially the Lindsay Unified Story. Robert Marzano wrote a foreword and is publishing the book, and it tells in greater detail some of the things we've shared today. It tells the story, but it also tells a little bit of the how-to. It tells you about the things we did, the mistakes we made, the lessons we learned, and we hope that this resource will be of benefit to the greater field as others are forming. I would say this, though, too, about the book, is we are not expecting, nor do we advocate for anybody to do the Lindsay model or to do what Lindsay did necessarily or follow the steps we took. This is not a cookie-cutter approach to transforming learning. We have lessons learned. What we would recommend is that each community study the future, understand what it will demand of their learners, and create a system that will most effectively meet the needs of your learners in your community. The power of that is it makes it your own. We don't want anybody saying, oh, we're doing Lindsay's thing, and then it doesn't work. Oh, we're doing this thing. Make it your thing. Make it your community's vision for the future of learning.
We're really talking about competency-based learning. We're talking about personalized learning, and the system needs to match the needs of its learners. I'll leave you with some resources to contact us. There's Tom and my email. Recognize that if you reach Tom with a generic question, it will get to Barry, so use Barry first. And there's our website, and our website is chock full of resources. There's about 20 YouTube videos that are posted there that will give you insight into the development of the strategic design, how we incorporate growth mindset development, engaging communities, putting learners at the center of the learning, and all aspects of the PBS. So at this point, I think we're on schedule, Scott, to respond to some questions and comments from participants.
Yes, and I want to say thank you so much. That was fantastic. If you transition back to the Google document, Tom and Barry, could you move back to that? And we have several questions from participants.
Okay.
Scott, can we go ahead and transition to yours?
Yep,
your slide then?
Yep,
Yeah.
I'll take it back. Okay, and we have several questions from Wes and Dr. Email. Maybe Dr. Email, could you identify maybe one or two or three questions that are most pertinent. We want to make sure that Wes has a chance to ask questions as well.
Well, let's take one at a time.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for your work. First, let me check. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very impressive. We're actually sending multiple school representatives from our district up to Lindsay, and we've already been out there several times ourselves. And just the work you're doing there is pretty impressive. And we're in the same boat. We've been making great strides. We have an experimental school here that's doing much of the same kind of work that Lindsay is doing. We've been struggling with having a uniform technological system that handles all of this stuff. It looks like you guys are working with the Empower system to basically handle all of that. Really, the question, if I could get any one of these answered, would be around curriculum and assessment processes. Could you give us a little bit of detail about how curriculum is developed? Is it something that the individual educators are responsible for? If so, is it something? How does the district level administration guarantee and assure the curriculum? How is it assessed? How do you make a determination as to whether or not a student is competent in a given standard and therefore can be compacted into maybe another topic or another grade level? As you can see, a lot of questions, but the curriculum and assessment question is the main one for me.
Terrific. Could you just remind us who you are and what district you are?
Oh, sure. Dr. Emil Ahangarza, the Santa Ana Unified School District in Southern California, right next to Disneyland.
Thank you very much.
And so with regard to the curriculum and assessment practices, in order to make it guaranteed, is the curriculum is defined ultimately at the district level, okay? And however, I want to talk to you a little bit about the process, is that while we have curriculum and instruction experts at the district level, all of them were former learning facilitators in the system. We are consistently have set up systems of bringing in learning facilitators at all levels, those who are well respected, those who have strong voice and strong instructional curriculum practices in their own learning environments. We bring them in to actually help us identify what is the essential learning, and then help us to vet, narrow that down even further to make it even more viable. And so ultimately, the ultimate decision is made, I think, at the district level, so that we can have a guaranteed system-wide curriculum, and it's really clear. And it's built out into learning progressions, so it's very, very clear on if you're going to learn this is the progression that you take in order to get to that mastery level. But it's highly informed by everybody in the field. And that it literally, I just want to let you know that it's almost like I want to say it's in constant revision. I'm going to say that, but with kind of the caveat, but we make revisions nearly every spring. And then, and those revisions have become less and less each year since we've started. But we went from California state standards to the Common Core state standards, and that was a massive revision. But now we basically are continuing to vet. Often people will say, well, you need to include this, and then 8 months later, they're coming in and saying, there's too much to cover, or there's too much competency, there's too much to learn. And so we set up the forums for discussion and debate and dialogue, often in small group with site level and district level experts in order to really define the curriculum. And it's the same with assessments. There's plenty of assessment resources out there. From we use school city assessments, and we've used action learning systems in the past, and we probably still use them now. And then we've created our own assessments. We've used assessments that are linked to the SBAC type of assessments, and again, it's a similar process in that once we defined the content, then we determine, so what are the assessments that are going to align to that content, and what are the assessment tools and processes that will be used for a learner to demonstrate competence. And again, those are agreed upon. And just this fall, I'll just give you the example. This fall, there was a big, like an uprising in Lindsay, I'll just call it that, a little uprising amongst the learning facilitator staff that the assessments are too hard, and thought there was just these things. And so what we did was we brought in the team of people who created them, and we added a few extras who were complaining that they were too hard, and they made modifications, and the modifications were minimal. It was more about educating them about why they had to be that rigorous. And then now they're in the field advocating on, yeah, those are pretty rigorous assessments, but this is why. And this is what we need to do to our instruction to ensure our kids are mastering those assessments. And so that's kind of a little bit of the process in the work that we do. I would tell you that it is very orderly, it's very clear, but it is ongoing, and it enrolls everybody.
And you are correct, sir, in assuming that all of that lies inside of Empower. So all of the progressions, all of the curriculum, all of the playlists that support that curriculum, all the measurement topics, all of the assessments are linked back to Empower. And so learners are constantly aware of where they are in their learning and what they need to do to demonstrate competency, which gets verified by their learning facilitators so that they can move on to the next measurement topic and the next new learning.
Which relates to a question that was asked at the very beginning that I think it's a good time to jump in on that one. There was about questions around competency and how do you get people to understand what the report card means or says and that sort of thing. What do you do at the end of a semester and stuff? Part of that is training and developing people that it's about progress. It's not a time-based system. It's not about when you learn it. It's that you ultimately demonstrate mastery. So it's about shifting the mindset of the community that there isn't a magic drop dead date on June 1st, the end of the school year, or January 10th, the end of the semester. It's a true snapshot of where you are in the learning. And then, yes, if a learner leaves, you have to give them a grade or a score or a GPA. So you transition it and you transform that. But that's not, you just take that on as an individual learner. System-wide, it's where they are in the learning. System-wide, it's training parents and learners to understand their progress. So we have learners set goals, and then they're given progress based that shows you're from the goal you set, you are on pace, behind pace, or ahead of pace toward attaining that, towards goal attainment. So we've shifted the language to be more about goal attainment and less about pace or competence.
Tom and Barry, I'm just looking at time. I want to make sure we maybe have time for two more questions if we go very quickly.
Okay.
For Wes, do you have one of those questions that you'd like to hear from Tom and Barry?
We can't hear Wes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would be interested. I have three, and I would be interested in their choice. So I will defer to them. The impact of the Empower system, because when I visited, it was being developed, but it wasn't being used widely. So I wonder insights on how that has changed anything. Anecdotal feedback from students once they're in college about benefits or disadvantages they've experienced, or a beneficial strategy you've used with parents in communicating vision. Your choice. Anything you want to talk about?
Thanks for personalizing it for us. I'll defer to Tom.
Okay.
I just would. Well, go ahead, Tom.
I would. I'm going to give you some response to the impact of Empower. Okay. Empower is our learner management system that we have essentially worked with an outside company to build from the ground up in a lot of ways. And so there's been lots of mistakes, there's been lots of false starts, there's been lots of adjustments. There's been the frustration and the pain of dealing with a system that isn't fully built yet. The benefit of why we've stayed with Empower is because it's the only organization, the only company that has personalized the system for what we needed. Most other that we've worked with, or all ever that we've looked at, and we've looked at all sorts of different learning management systems. We look at them every single year. They have a product, and they're selling you that product. And they usually are not willing to make the adjustments or the changes to meet your system. And so that's why we've stuck with Empower. Empower becomes more powerful, and it has become, we came out with it, they unleashed Empower 2.3 this year. And it was the most successful level of Empower that we've experienced to date. And it's getting even better and better. And whenever you have a system like that, though, it takes time for learners and parents to really become, and learning facilitators become accustomed to using it. The last thing I would say about Empower is that, I kind of lost my train of thought, but another element of Empower that I would say is that in any learner management system, junk in, junk out. So if you build playlist or you put in curriculum and assessments that is junk, low rigor, unaligned, it's not useful. And there are some systems out there that do just that. So one element of Empower that we have is we do some quality control. So when playlists are built, we actually vet them for rigor, we vet them for alignment to the guaranteed curriculum, we vet them for engagement and interest for learners. Not everybody is building playlists now because not everybody has the ability or quality background to build quality playlists.
Let me weigh in real quickly. I just came from one of our learning communities, and the difference, I think, when you toured, Empower was used by staff. Now Empower is used by learners. So they're getting more comfortable getting their curriculum, personalizing their experiences through Empower. And I had the good fortune recently to talk to a couple of graduates who are finishing college, and the only feedback I got that was critical was that the Lindsay PBS didn't prepare them for the power of final exams, because in our system they're demonstrating their competency and mastery as they go through the measurement topics. There isn't one single assessment that determines their ultimate outcome, and that was really good feedback for us.
Yeah, so that's something we're revisiting based on feedback from learners.
Good questions, thank you. And thanks for visiting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom Berry. We're going to have to go ahead and close out, just looking at the clock. But a really fantastic opportunity for learning, and we just really appreciate it. For everyone on the CBE task force, I just want to remind you that we encourage you to continue to draft your plays. We have a tracker that you can view here to be able to see what plays we've been able to identify so far. And those plays can be uploaded to the Drive folder. Our next call will be on February 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're considering breaking this into some mini sessions focused on some specific areas. If you have other ideas outside of those that I asked at the first of this call, please let us know. And with that, thank you so much, and look forward to our next call with you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.